West Nile TV. Miyuder Ingomwa.
West Nile Television, lighting up the region. This particular edition of The Viewpoint will look at various events happening in the region and around the country through the week. And today with me in studio is a journalist that is going to give his perspective on various issues that are happening around the country. Before we begin our show, the COVID uptake currently as a country stands at 3.3 million, and we are about 700,000 or more to reach the 4.8 million target. I will turn to my fellow journalist. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure being on The Viewpoint. It's my maiden time being here, both as a guest and also as a colleague. And I hope that we will be able to digest a number of issues so that people can be able to understand from our perspective, from the perspective of the eye of an eagle, from the fourth estate. That is basically how we're going to dissect the matter at hand. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have over 3.3 Ugandans being vaccinated, and we are about 1.5 million to reach the target of 4.8. This is the beginning of November, and we look forward to having that by December for the grand reopening of the Ugandan economy. 1.5 million people to go. Remember when the president gave that announcement, 1.7 Ugandans had vaccinated by that time. And now we've seen an improvement of over 1.5 getting vaccinated. What do you think was the pull factor to have these Ugandans vaccinated?
Okay, first, Ugandans are tired of being under lockdown. You remember, this is the second year running that we are under lockdown.
Yeah.
It's never happened like this before. Ugandans are used to this free life. You know, there has been some research that was done. In East Africa, Ugandans are the happiest people. And owing to that fact, Ugandans love celebrating. Ugandans love, merrymaking. And so all this has been curtailed. And so that in itself has been the pull factor for a number of Ugandans to go and get the jab. Yeah? But if you can remember when these vaccines came through, there were a number of Ugandans who actually got the negative information about the jab. A number of people were saying the jab has, the devil's something.
The 666.
The 666 is in it and stuff like that. And so a number of people actually opted out of this. But they had a second thought later on, because they say, well, the people who are getting the jab, even religious leaders have got the jab already, and nothing has gone wrong with them.
And they are one of the key advocates for the flow
and there are politicians who have got the jab already. The number of people, even doctors, have got the jab already. If they are still alive, nothing can happen to me, because I also need my freedom.
The fatality rate is minimal in this case.
There is actually no registered case of somebody dying as a result of the vaccine in this country. We have registered cases where people die because of the COVID infection, not because of the vaccine that is used to prevent COVID. And so with this in mind, a number of people came on board.
But I've seen local people, I have seen a group of people saying, my uncle took the vaccine and he died hours later.
Was this medically proven? Was this from was an autopsy done to ascertain that this uncle who died because of the jab?
Well, most of those people have comorbidities. They have underlying conditions.
Well, it is the underlying condition that killed him. He ought to die with or without the vaccine. So I cannot attribute that to the vaccine, for sure. But if you look at the situation now, there are a number of people who have come up to advocate for people to go and get the jab. The number of people who are, telling people to go for the jab. Look at bar owners. Look at business people.
Yeah,
look at these DJs. Look at presenters. Their the way they get money has been stifled.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, they are eager to walk past the lockdown. If you look at European countries, you go to UK now, you realize that sports is going on normally.
Yeah.
But still, 2 years down the road in Uganda, we still have a restriction. When the United Kingdom, the government of the United Kingdom imposed the lockdown, it was around the same period when Uganda also imposed the lockdown. But they have gone past it. Look at us. 2 years down the road, we are still under lockdown. Yeah? Though people abuse, break the law that is put in place, the pronouncements that are made by the president, but still we are under lockdown. Schools have not been opened. Our neighbors, Kenya, have opened schools. Yeah. You go to Rwanda, schools are operational. You go to Tanzania, you can never know that there was something called corona that occurred in this world. They have moved past it. But Uganda is an exception. I don't know why, and yet we are a landlocked country. The countries that would worry the most would be Kenya and Tanzania. Maybe Somalia and the rest, because they are at a border, they border the sea. Maybe they have so much interaction with the world outside through the goods that come through and stuff like that. And so, with this in mind, a number of people thought it wise that they should get the vaccination. Yeah. Because absent of that, schools may not be reopened. Yeah. The future of our children will be doomed. Businesses will still remain under key and lock. Look at these bar owners. How have they been managing life 2 years down the road? Look at the private schools. The number of owners of private schools.
Over 700 have closed and are unable to return back in business.
There is no future for them. And where will these children go?
Actually, talking about that, one of the challenges that the education sector is going to face right now, we have almost 2 lots who are supposed to be in P1. There is the P1 of 2020, there is the P1 of 2021, which is supposed to start in 2022. And
there are also middle-class children that have aged. They can't continue being in top class. They have to go to P1.
And others are supposed to replace them.
Yes.
Then another...
And you also realize that there are students of private schools that have permanently closed.
Yeah.
Where will they go? They will go to these other schools. Now, look at teenagers that have gotten pregnant. The girl child. Where will this go? If they are to open, the government should have an open hand. They should make sure that every teenage mother should get back to the classroom that they've left before lockdown.
Well,
for me,
won't they suffer discrimination from the
discrimination from what? From who? Who impregnated them, first of all? Yeah? Who will discriminate them? For me, I think the same sensitization that we do that the president used and the rest of the leaders in this country used to manage HIV/AIDS, to manage, women empowerment, to manage the killer diseases, should be the same that can be used to manage this situation so that the girls can remain in school despite the fact that they are mothers. That's my take on that.
Another thing also that I observe from the education sector, we are not sure whether all the teachers are around. We have had teachers go for odd jobs. We have had teachers who have shifted to other businesses, and these businesses seem to give them more income than the usual. Yeah. How do we bridge that gap? How best do you think government can bridge that gap, the teacher-pupil ratio?
Now, for a very long time, the government has been at loggerheads with the teachers over pay. Yeah. And so with the coming in of this situation that we have found ourselves in, it's going to continue. For me, that's what I think. Because one, the issue of teachers' pay is a big question that has in the past not been answered well. And so the pupil-teacher ratio can only be answered by the government by recruiting more teachers. And will this be possible? Does the government have the finances to do this? What would Matia Kasaija say if this idea was fronted to him? Does he have the money to make sure that we recruit more teachers to counter the number of pupils, the number of children that will come to school next year? And so these are some of the questions that should be able to ask. For me, all these things can only be answered by the government, because at this time now, I know that parents are going to send their children to school irrespective of the situation that we are going to have come next year. But the most unfortunate bit is it seems the government is not even ready for the reopening of schools come 2022. Because as we talk now, the Ministry of Education and Sports clearly said they have not set a date for the reopening of schools in January. So we're just a few months, 1 month and some days away from the reopening of the schools. 1 month and 3 weeks.
Well, let's have faith.
So, unless they do a miracle now.
Let's have faith that probably these institutions can open, basing on what happened on 1st November.
Yeah.
We've seen tertiary institutions open, universities, vocational schools, primary teachers college. Unfortunate, where I come from in Zombo, the only primary teachers college was locked down. Can I say that, for lack of a better word?
Well,
or phased out.
A number of them are going to be phased out in the next 10 years.
Yes.
And so there are other options that have been put in place to accommodate these structures. And so that is not an exception. If they have closed it earlier, maybe they foresaw the future. But I hope, on a serious note, that the government will be able to do something better with this technical institution. I mean, these PTCs.
Yeah, probably they are coming up with better educational reforms.
Yeah.
To fit what lies ahead of us.
Exactly.
We've seen universities like Chambogo come up with that if you're not vaccinated, you will not access the campus, and bugs have been, let me say, abolished. Yeah.
All right, now let me start with the condition of vaccination of students. Well, on one side, it is the right thing to do, but is it legal? That is one question that needs to be asked by each and every one of us who a law-abiding citizen of this country.
If a public university did that, meaning over 15,000 have to get vaccinated.
Well, of course they have to.
But they
is this within the law? What pronouncement has the parliament made? Over time, the last 2 years, we have only been relying on the presidential directive. What does the Constitution say on this? Well, the Constitution says that the president's directive becomes a law. These policies are derived from some of these ministers that make statements and stuff. But can this be upheld for all this period of time? What could be the expiry of a pronouncement made by the president?
It could be 2 weeks, it could be 4 days.
So if the university is the one coming up with this, what legal connotation do they have to back this up? Somebody could be able to run to court and challenge their, their pronouncement, the condition they are putting in place. These days it's easier. Gone are the days when a teacher can punish a pupil, and even if the pupil is not on the wrong, and the teacher goes scot-free. These days, you punish a pupil, the pupil can run to court, and you will be penalized if you have punished the pupil outside of the law. And so, for me, I see that a student can even go to courts of law, or the Mabrizi group, the Mabrizi type of people can go to court and be able to challenge this directive from the university. And I do know that it is based on a good faith. They are doing this so that people continue studying. They're doing this so that we do not have deaths resulting from COVID-19.
But I've seen a number of students heed to that directive.
Well, it is because it is good for me and you. It is good for me and you to get a jab. but it shouldn't be a must. It shouldn't be a condition. That's what I think. People should be encouraged to go and get the vaccination. But people should not be coerced to go and get the vaccination. Those are two different things. What the university is doing is coercing the students to go and get vaccinated. But what the president is doing, what the rest of the leaders are doing, is encouraging people to go and get vaccinated. So that is where the difference is. Though for me, I believe it is good people should get vaccinated, just like in other countries, so that we become free once again.
But some of you, unless you're coerced, you cannot do that. For example, some corporate workplaces that you cannot access the place unless you're vaccinated.
Somebody can sue. Is that on my job description? Is it written somewhere on my, on the policy, personnel policy of the workplace? What does the personnel policy say about the health of a staff? So I mean, people should be able to weigh this properly before they dive deep into, saying this is a must. You either do it or you get out. Before you get into that level, they should be able to understand what are the pros and cons of this pronouncement that I'm about to make. Well, the president made the pronouncement there, but the president has never come to people's homes to say, you must do this or else we get you arrested. He has never done that. So what these workplaces and these universities are doing is you either do this or we deal with you, which is totally outside the law.
Fellow Ugandans, we have about 1 month and 25 days to have the economy fully reopened. Let's go vaccinate and let's keep the SOPs. With me in studio is Adabati Yusuf Opingopi. We'll go for a short break and we'll be right back.
West Nile TV, lighting up the region.
Welcome back from that short break. Opingopi and Adabati Yusuf with me in studio today, and the discussion continues. And we want to talk about the by-election that the Independent Electoral Commission came up to announce. The chairperson Electoral Commission, Simon Byabakama, sometime back announced that we shall have residual by-elections, especially for the local government. And in West Nile as a region, we have 108 positions to be filled for sub-county councillors and district councillors. And we have 108. Here in Arua City, we only have two. Yumbe and Maracha district have the highest numbers, bringing it to 40 plus. And what do you think of these by-elections? Do you think there will be more free and fair since we don't have the big shots around?
Okay. For me, the first question that should come in our minds is why the delay? Almost 1 year down the road. Almost, I must say. These positions have not been filled. What kind of services have the people
who are not represented
been receiving? Because this representation is not just for the persons elected to go and enjoy seats, to go and eat money. It is for effective representation, to make sure that everyone is democratically represented in all these levels of leadership.
And issues pertaining them advocated for.
Yes, and have the issues that they are facing being, voiced. have they been effectively represented in every level in the LC3 Council?
A district
in
like
the
Marasha
district
with
council.
over 40 places.
Just imagine.
What happens to those sub-counties?
That is the question.
Aren't there eligible people or?
So for me, the question gets back to Biabakama and this group. Why the delay? Why did these positions why did they fill these positions when the rest of the elections were taking place? Why
Maybe
candidates
did not come up to get nominated for particular position.
I wouldn't want to buy that. Because if you go to every sub-county, and let's talk about persons with disability. If you go to every sub-county, at least there's a person with disability. It couldn't be natural. It could be caused by accident, or a person who is visually impaired, a person with hearing inability, a person with, physical impairment. These persons exist. So what are these leaders doing? The LC3 chairperson, why didn't you identify people of such kind?
Most of those positions are going to be special interest groups.
If they are special, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's what we're talking about.
Youth,
women, youth.
Elderly.
I can't say that youth did not want to participate, because in this election that just passed, youth participated in the greatest number ever. So nobody can tell me that we have pushed it now because youth so and so was not willing.
Maybe they were mobilized. Maybe they were mobilized for the bigger election. In Uganda, the biggest election that really sounds is the presidential. We have the MP, then we have the LC5. By the time it trickles down to LC3, voter turn-up is one thing.
Well, for me, I think the Electoral Commission should get back to the drawing board. They should get these elections done fast. The presidential election should be the last election in Uganda.
So your suggestion is that the lower local governments should have their representatives elected first?
Let's elect councillors first.
Okay.
Let's elect LC3 chairpersons. Let's elect LC5 chairpersons. Then let's elect these parliamentary representatives. Then we elect the president. That way, every position will be very important for everyone in this country. Because by the time we elect, because a lot of people have interest only in the presidential elections. By the time my candidate does not go through, I will say, the rest will also be rigged the way they rigged mine. You know that is that talk that happens. Yeah. So for me, I think the most important thing is, let's start with these special interest groups. If it is possible, we can have all these elections done in one day. It's possible. It's possible. You get a number of papers. This paper for councillors, because you know your area. This for LC3. This one for LC5. And then we have the one of MP and president all together. They plaque them. Even if it is this size, go, you vote.
But
it
becomes...
we start with these lower ones, then we end with the president in the second or third day. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. But having an election done once in one day for various categories of people, the backlog is going to come when it comes to tally. Now, and once results delay, you Ugandans.
Okay. Now, I know I'm going to come to the first question that you asked. But for me, this also brings me back to the importance of some of these positions. Why are some of these positions created if they are for effective representation? I have not been effectively represented for the last, I should say, 5 months or something, ever since I've never elected my candidate who is supposed to represent me. So are these positions important? This affirmative action, for me, by 2026, we should put an end to all these affirmative positions. There should be nothing like a woman MP. What is the use of now the level of education that we have attained? There should be nothing like, person with disability. Are they going to represent people differently? Does it mean that if a councillor representing persons of disability at West Nile TV is sent to Parliament, sent to the council, and a direct seat probably is sent to council, does it mean that if an issue affects a person with disability, you who is elected as a real councillor, a direct councillor, will not help me?
You do not understand the issue.
No, you see, leadership is not a one-man thing. Being a leader means that you have people behind you.
When-
You
when-
cannot
when
become
we
a
say-
leader
when we
without
say-
having a backing.
When we say a district councillor for person with disability, the assumption there is that a person with disability understands issues of a fellow person with disability.
What if this person with disability gets elected directly and represents everyone? We have seen MPs who are persons with disability being elected directly
Yeah,
to parliament.
yeah.
And does it mean that they go to parliament and do not represent persons with disability issues?
We've also seen women come on direct
Yes.
seats of counties.
Previously, we had who here? Bako Kobako was representing Aivu County, which was a direct position. We have seen currently in Yumbe East, Aringa East,
Naringa is the minister.
Huda, the state minister for
defense.
for veteran affairs and
Yeah.
defense, yes. She is on a direct seat. Does it mean that she's not going to represent issues of women? It's totally a different thing. So I think we have, the government is spending more on paying people than providing service for people. So for me, I think some of these positions should be abolished so that more money can be saved to provide better service for people. Now, let me come to the aspect of whether these elections will be free and fair.
Fair, yeah.
To be honest
You
with
know, in elections, that is the word they use, free and fair. So it becomes fair when you lost.
it's election.
Okay.
Election can never be fair. Election can never be. Let me tell you, in a democratic society, you see, democracy is very unfair. So nobody can tell me it is free and it is fair. Democracy is unfair. Democracy is a Western thing. It has been imposed on. That is why, you see, a number of African leaders are suffering. They are playing tricks. They are playing board games here and there, pulling themselves, okay, 2 terms, okay, the people said 3 terms, okay. Now, they are playing a lot of games here and there because democracy is not our thing. Democracy is unfair for the minority whose voices have not been represented through the elections.
What is an alternative of democracy?
Probably autocracy.
You want us to go back to those days?
Not going back to those days. Let's look at countries that have flourished very well in an democratic environment. Let's look at China. Why is China behaving very well? You come to Uganda, they will say, let's open a road here and this road should be tarmacked. Somebody will say, I need my compensation, otherwise, 2026 is coming, we shall see. You are the one who told these UNRWA people to come and what? Break my house. We shall see. You see, that is where the problem is. There are countries that are flourishing well under dictatorship. Look at what Amin did within the 8 years that the current democratic government is doing over 35 years. What Amin did in 8 years was much better than what this democratic government has done in probably 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. Why? Because he had people he consulted. He had brains with him who works. He would tell them, you see, what can we do here? They would say, okay, let's construct an antenna, a mast here so that communication is better. He did it.
And there it was.
What can we do? Well, why don't we set up this hospital here for people to benefit? And they did it. And then they say, okay, people, there is a lot of flies here. We are moving you away from here to Gulu side. We are moving you away from here to Chiradogo side. You leave this place. And he did it. And that is why we have this game park, the Machison Falls game park, the Para game park.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people were dying from sleeping sickness because of infestation of flies around there. And he just woke up and said, people, move away from here. And moved the people there without having any consultations. This thing of leaders, first go and talk to your people. They will come, they talk to people for 3 months, targeting their position of 2026, so that as they talk to people, they don't fail in 2026. This is where the problem is. These elections that will come,
the Democrat.
I am not very sure what people mean by free and fair. I've never seen a free and a fair elections in Uganda. Never. ever since I was born.
But in election, one is supposed to lose and one is supposed to win.
So what is free and fair?
The free one probably favors the winner, and the fair one favors the ones whose votes did not add up.
Well, I am not sure if that is the case. But to be honest, even if in a democratic society, even if the voice of the majority are better thinkers than the minority are better thinkers than the majority, they will still have to go with the misrule of the majority. And that is where the problem is. Well, people should only be able to go and vote for people of their interest. Go and exercise your democratic right, because it is a democratic society. That is where it has to end. But the aspect of whether it will be free and fair, I'm not very sure about it.
Thank you so much. Let's talk about the Uganda support to municipals infrastructure development, USMID. We've seen Ministry of Lands dispatched garbage trucks to municipalities and cities, and the beneficiaries here in West Nile, we had Koboko municipality, Nebi municipality, and Arua municipality get two. But in Arua, we see that the center of garbage is at the heart of the city, just behind the office of the Prime Minister. The place is littered. Moreover, the city council is just next to OPM. There is reproductive health offices, and basically it is a working space but littered with garbage.
Sometimes I ask the question whether the people working in OPM Rua have lost sense of smell. Because if you go behind OPM, I'm telling you the truth, if you go behind OPM Arua, the stench coming out of that uncollected garbage,
it is unbearable.
It's unbearable. Now, I keep wondering whether this has to be the kind of environment that we live in. I keep wondering whether this is the Arua that was once the cleanest city, the cleanest town in Africa, the second cleanest town in Africa.
And even I wonder, how did that place come to become a garbage dumping point?
Well, it's mismanagement by the leadership. I must be honest with you. Here in Arua Central Division, Arua Municipality or Arua City, the only leader that I can honestly, without any fear or favor, give credit to is Honorable Asiki Charles. Asiki Charles made sure that Arua was the cleanest town in the whole of Eastern Africa and the second cleanest town after this town from Cape Verde, the capital city of Cape Verde from Western Africa. It was the second.
What did he do that the current leadership seems not to be doing?
Well, previously there used to be a lot of kiosks in town. The perception was that it was these kiosks that were causing what? That were causing congestion, causing garbage to accumulate, because there would be, these kind of toilets in Kavera. These Kavera toilets, people would poop in Kavera, susu in Kavera, and throw them in sewage lines in town. So he says the problem is the kiosks. Move the kiosks out of the central business center. That happened. The center became clean. So he brought in people who could be able to clean, and they were paid. He liaised with the town clerk to make sure that people who clean were paid.
That reminds me, one of the concerns that we got, if my producer has it right, there are images that run through. The people who are supposed to collect garbage are complaining that Arua City Council has not paid them.
So because we have given our leadership, staring to the dogs. Hungry people who really want to eat at all cost. Asiki wasn't that kind of leader. He would make sure that he liaises. You remember the town clerks that were interdicted. These were after Asiki. Because he was... Let me be honest with you people. We must be able to elect leaders who have read. Because these leaders are going to manage a town clerk who has a master's, even 3 masters. So this was the situation with Asiki. He read. He was an economist. He was a number of things in one. So he would be able to understand documents that where is this money going? Whose money is this?
Yeah, he was a good planner.
Remember, yes,
because economists are planners.
Yes. So after his term of office expired, you remember a whole road was eaten by somebody. Road was eaten. Mango Road. Up to now.
Mango Road, it has been recently commissioned.
It was eaten.
That time.
Yes. So the issue was still with IGG. I don't know how far it is still there. So for me, the whole thing is leadership. It's about planning. Now, before the left, there were some trucks. There still is another truck in place. But now, even during his tenure of office, he had established, together with the people he works with, he had established a garbage management center at Uwata, a garbage treatment center.
For recycling.
Yes, for recycling. Yeah. So that whenever garbage is collected from the town center, it is taken to Uwata, and this garbage is treated. The cameras are separated and stuff like that, and these people were paid. They were on salary of the municipal authority. So when Asiki's tenure of office expired...
Which year was that?
That was before Honorable Kato came to power. This was, I think, 2016.
2016.
Before 2016.
Yeah.
So this is basically what happened. From 11 to 16, I think, was still Asiki, yes. That was his last term as the mayor.
Yeah.
Before he contested as what? As the MP Central Division, and he lost. Because he thought he worked well there, and then he wanted to go up a bit, and that is where he lost. And so, for me, that is the whole problem with garbage in Arua Central Division, Arua City, is leadership. It has nothing to do with anything but leadership. Even the trucks. You realize that if you go to government premises, you realize that there are government trucks that are parked there. Because
with
of corruption.
Tires deflated.
With deflated
Actually,
tires.
I've seen Usmid vehicles also
Yes.
with deflated tires.
Yes, they sometimes do it purposely so that the procurement process is enhanced, and they themselves buy these trucks. This is what the leaders do. These trucks are in
but
good condition.
You look at a vehicle and it is in good condition.
Yes, but they say it is spoiled. And then when they initiate the procurement process, they tell the people in the procurement office that let's sell these trucks away, they're occupying our office space and stuff like that. And at the end of it all, who are the people who buy the trucks? The same people who said these trucks are not working. They buy them, go and use them. So coming back to the issue that we have here, the garbage, the new trucks that they have brought will only do much if the leaders will be able to have the heart for this municipality, for this city. If the leaders that we have can only be able to look beyond self. Because what happens now, the leaders want to make sure that every money that goes in that direction comes back to them.
How? In
this city division, you realize that there are numerous accounts where people pay taxes. These authorities, these leaders open different accounts.
Probably these accounts are according to maybe departments.
Not true. This is account for collecting tax.
I normally see the community development have theirs, then the forestry department have theirs. Is this supposed to be consolidated?
Now, forestry department has no right to collect tax for the central division. I am talking about accounts that shop owners
where they pay license fees. They have been deferred previously in the last, I should say, 5 years or 10 years. So these are some of the issues that are affecting here. If you go to the garbage treatment center, it is down. It has become a garbage dumping center. So the first thing the leaders... being recycled.
It is not being recycled. If you go there, the stench coming out of there is the same stench coming out from the OPM office Arua. Why is this happening? Because the leaders have closed their eyes to the realities of what they need to do, and they have opened their eyes for themselves. They are only selfish leaders that we have. I'm sorry to say. But these new trucks, in my view, will not do much. First of all, the leaders need to first of all sensitize the citizens. That is what the previous leaders used to do. I remember when I was still on radio, the leaders will be calling us. Please give us airtime. We do not have a lot of money for this. Give us airtime, even if it is 10 minutes. Previously, there used to be a lot of cholera in Arua. The leaders who fought, the people who fought cholera here, the current district health officer, Maracha, Dr. Ojomo Paul, Siki Charles, and a crop of others that I may not be able to mention here, they would go to leaders and to radios and sensitize people. But is that the case now? Our leaders even run away from just journalists because there are wrong things that they have done. They think we may be able to ask questions on those issues.
You journalists, you normally report wrong side of things.
We never report wrong sides.
You do not appreciate these people.
No, is there anything wrong with what I have been telling people now? Are these not facts?
Anyway,
Go
facts are bitter.
and
Facts
ask.
are bitter.
People will tell you what I am telling now. These are all facts that happened here.
And it is true that the whole heap of garbage
It's behind the OPM office. You go to town. These bins for collecting garbage, they are all rotten.
Yeah.
Why are they rotten?
Even the trenches have
yes,
a lot of feel in them.
Yes. These bins for collecting garbage to take them to probably the treatment center are not working anymore because the garbage that has been collected have been packed in that place for too long, and instead it produces, other chemicals that eat away these ions, the metals. And so, where does the problem come? Me, as a taxpayer, I bring my garbage to this garbage bin. The onus is upon the leaders to collect this garbage from here and take it to probably water to treat it better.
And it becomes organic manure.
What is happening? It is not the problem with the Wananchi, the citizens, but it is the leadership that we have. What they could do is to sensitize the citizens of Arua City on how to probably be able to separate these various garbage from home. Now, this brings me to the aspect of environmental management. The government for a very long time has passed a law against polythene bags.
Yeah.
But what do we see?
More polythene bags.
More polythene bags keep coming to the city. Where are they coming from? From these industries in Namamve, from these industries in Kampala. Who own these industries? The big shots in government, who are supposed to be able to direct the police on the implementation of the laws that the parliament has passed. This is where we are. So for me, this brings us to the aspect of democracy versus dictatorship.
The Viewpoint on West Nile Television with Andabati Yusuf Opingopi. We'll go for a short break and we'll be right back.
West Nile TV, lighting up the region.
West Nile Television. Welcome back from that short break. As we wind up this discussion, we talk about what happened on 2nd November, the International Day on Ending Impunity Against Journalists. I have a journalist with me in studio, and he will tell me in a few words what he thinks of that day, whether that day is just a ceremonial celebration or it really trickles down to the journalists on the ground.
Thank you very much, my colleague Patricia. It's so sad that in this day and age, people still look at journalists as, people who are not doing a good cause for the community. It's so sad that in this day and age, we still get journalists being attacked in this day and age, we still get journalists being in prison for doing their work. It's very unfortunate. Recently, a colleague of ours, a fellow journalist who works, is a reporter, is a journalist with Radio Patches, was assaulted by members of the community, you know, who were demonstrating against Honorable Oguzu Lee's, you know, takeover of Barifa Forest for ecotourism. And so, in the process, they assaulted this journalist, strangled him, and destroyed his phone that he was using for taking photos. If you're doing demonstration, what are you hiding? I thought, as a demonstrator, you want the journalist to broadcast your grievance so that the person who has offended you should be able to know how offended you are. But in turn, they turned against the journalist and assaulted the journalist. In Moyo, a journalist, we are essential workers. A journalist.
I'll start from there.
During this period of the lockdown, we're essential workers. We are just like the police. We're just like the doctors. We're just like, we're just like these people that I've mentioned. But in Moyo, a Daily Monitor journalist was beaten by the police. People who have gone to school, simply because he was taking pictures of them beating an expectant mother during curfew time. So it comes to the aspect of...
And when they're beaten, their equipment is vandalized?
Yes. They first remove the memory card and break it because he took photos of a police officer beating an expectant mother who was going to the hospital past the curfew time. So it's very sad. So one thing the members of the community and the leaders and the force that has in the recent past over-tortured us should know is that we are actually helping them to do community policing. But our way of doing work is non-segregative. If a fellow journalist is on the wrong, we shall take the picture and broadcast. If a police officer is on the wrong, we shall take the picture and broadcast. It does not mean that we are breaking the law. We are doing all this within the law. So where does the beating come? So for me, as we celebrate this day, as we look at the plight of the journalists, we should be able to focus deeply to do a soul searching, to do a reflection as citizens of this country. Because there is no country without freedom of the press. The moment the freedom of press is stifled, you should know this is already a dark country. Anything can happen. And so we pray that we do not reach that level where the freedom of the press is stifled, where journalists are incarcerated probably in Comunicado. Sometimes this happens. Yeah. But look, for me, there is a lot that we, as Uganda, should be able to copy from Kenya as far as freedom of the press is concerned. Absent of that, we may not be able to do what we do well, because what the press does, what journalism does, is to do checks and balances. We are, they say, the fourth arm actually of the government. The government has three arms, but journalism is actually the fourth, and that is why we are the fourth estate. We play oversight role. What is happening where? But the most unfortunate bit is the people get to us only when they're in trouble. But if they want somebody who is in conflict with the law, who has offended their right, apprehended, that's when they run to us. But when they are the one in conflict with the law, they think we are implicating them, which is not true. We are not. We are only doing our job within the law as permitted by the Constitution of Uganda. Freedom of speech,
freedom of expression,
freedom of press, and freedom of expression.
Talking impunity, let's come to, I must commend journalists. I think journalists are people who are very passionate about their work.
Exactly.
In that he is beaten today, tomorrow he's back behind the camera.
And with little pay, by the way.
Oh, let us come to that. Let us come to that. You know,
the lowest paid profession
a journalist
in this country.
And meaning you won't grow rich, my brother.
We are not people who are looking for riches. We are people who are looking to change the community. If you come to journalism, if you become a journalist in order to get rich, you're in the wrong profession. For us, we are doing, I should say, choir service of Uganda. We're doing church service. But
if you are a journalist and you cannot be able to provide for your basic needs, what is the rationale of working?
Well, this brings us back to what we were talking about before, the rights of the journalist. Whether the community members care about us. I told you, the leaders and the people around only care about journalists when they want something sensible, something important to them passed to the public.
I see people making fun of journalists, that journalists cannot afford lunch. Actually, they get
Which is
lunch
true.
when they go for workshops.
Which is true. Which is true.
Meaning if these workshops were not, you know.
That's where we know that there's some balanced diet and we can balance it from there.
But seriously, as the head of the family, you're balancing the diet yourself. What happens at home?
Because the little you have to take it home. And our ethics commands it that we can never be indulged in corruption because we fight corruption.
Okay.
So we cannot grow rich because we fight corruption. You look around, you realize that there are people who get rich through corruption.
We have seen journalists go for greener pastures.
Yes, they do. They do.
So who becomes the replacement in this?
There are always people to replace people in every position.
Wow.
There is another
but
person
will
who
the passion measure up to the other?
If the person follows the
passion?
code, if the person follows the code of conduct of a journalist, if the person follows the journalistic ethics of what a journalist is supposed to do, yes, can measure up. But whoever wants to become a journalist should know, one, we are doing community service. This is basically like CSR. For the community, we are not here to get rich. So this gets back to the people in authority, the minimum wage, even for
minimum
us.
Wage, regulation.
Some journalists are earning like house girls, even the house girls who are earning better than journalists.
Better than journalists,
So
there are very many house girls actually.
The government needs to get back to the drawing board, so that the life of a journalist who is doing noble work for the country can be uplifted. There's no president who moves anywhere without the PPU, the Presidential Press Unit. Check His Excellency President Museveni. There are always people running with cameras behind him. That is to show you how important we as journalists are.
And the world becoming a global village?
Yes. Without us, people cannot get the necessary information. And so there should be some little respect for us journalists who try to toil through the sun, through rains, to make sure that we bring every information for people to consume. And so basically that is very, very important for us to do our job well, and also for us to help the community develop, because whatever we do is geared towards making sure that the community that we live in becomes a better community, a better society in the years to come.
Journalist's perspective from a journalist. You are heading towards veteran status.
I know.
Especially in this
10 years I'm still counting. So
in this society of ours, personal. Thank you so much for that perspective on impunity and the plight of journalists and how they operate in their work. As we wind up the show, let's talk about URA. We've had this week in headlines: Uganda Revenue Authority hand over the mandate to register vehicles to the Ministry of Works and Transport. That seems like relieving URA of its burden, because we say URA collects the tax. So let Ministry of Works and Transport register. Do you think performance will be better?
For me, I think, well, yes and no. URA, for some time now, has been a star performer of all the, entities
of the government authorities.
Yeah. There are other authorities that have totally failed to meet the standard, like UNRA. Look at the roads.
National Roads Authority.
Most of the roads are not done by UNRA, by the way. Most of the roads are presidential directives, and it happens. There is a document signed between China Railway something and the president of Uganda to come and implement the construction of a road network between, for example, Koboko and Moyo and stuff. URA just becomes like just sniffing around like a dog. UNRA sniffs around like a dog to ascertain whether they can be able to get some cut out of it. I'm sorry to say. These are my words. These are my opinions. But URA has been performing well. But for me, there has been a lot of leakages. From government point, URA has been performing well. But from the point of a taxpayer, URA has not been performing well. But now with this transfer of registration of vehicles from URA to Minister of Works, I think if Minister of Works can be able to be empowered to do better, they can perform. But my problem is the ministry is headed by a non-engineer.
But he's performing well. We've seen in the past.
Listen, this is where the problem is.
Okay.
For me, this is where the problem is. Even let alone that, most of our ministries are headed by wrong people. But look at the Ministry of Agriculture. Let's talk about an IT specialist heading Ministry of Agriculture and a doctor heading the Ministry of Information and Technology, a medical doctor.
But having General Katumba, I think he has performed. In these 5 months that he has been in office, we have seen the toll road, the Entebbe Express Highway.
It has been in existence.
Yes, it has been in existence, but for now, people will begin to pay. Then there is this major milestone that he has reached to, that let us transfer registration of vehicles from URA to Ministry of Works. That is work being done.
People, you said in a few days, people will begin to pay for the express highway road.
Yes.
With Ugandan road that was constructed using taxpayers' money, people will begin to pay for the use of that road. Let's leave that there.
Okay.
Now, let's look at this transfer.
Yeah.
For me, I think with the goodwill, they will be able to perform. But the only problem is whether the general that is heading this ministry will be able to do checks and balances as it ought to be. The hardest thing to supervise, the hardest person to supervise is a professional when you are not. He's supervising engineers. He's supervising people who are professionals, and yet he is not an engineer. Okay, he's just somebody who has just left the gun to come and work in a civil environment.
In this case, what I think, URA will probably provide the data. As they clear the vehicles, come into the country, then Works takes on the registration process.
Still. But for me, I think there is need for a general overhaul.
Okay.
Look at the process of getting permit. How congested people can be in Kampala.
Oh.
Look at the process of getting a passport. Look at how congested people can be in the Office of the Internal Affairs.
Long lines from 5 a.m.
Won't this be the same case with the Ministry of Works? That is the question for me. The most important thing is the leadership of this country should be able to think far and wide, not just within the transfer of these entities, of these arms from one entity to another. That may not be able to help to a larger extent. But they should look at how all this can be handled Recently, there is a bomb scare. What is the guarantee that with the population gathering at where they collect passports, where they collect driving permits, somebody cannot have ill intention? So the government should be able to look widely and see what is a lasting solution to some of these things. Can't we do all these things online? We are a country that has the Ministry of ICT.
And we have National Information Technology Authority.
Yes.
NITA.
Yes. So this brings me to the issue I raised that you
and
mentioned
actually,
about.
and actually, NITA was launched in Koboko,
Yes.
in West Nile.
Yes. But are these entities headed by the right people to think right for the country? Because I know there's a medical doctor heading the Ministry of ICT. And the one of agriculture is also different. So for me, my advice as a mere journalist is the government should be able to think beyond the box and see, apart from placing people to benefit them for the politics that they have played or yet to play, they should be able to place in right people to these offices to do right work for this country. Absent of that, this shift from URA to Ministry of Works may even fail. It will even become a stillbirth if reorganization, better reorganization is not done. That's basically my submission on this.
Thank you so much, viewer, for keeping with us on Star Times West Nile Television Channel 447. This has been The Viewpoint with Andabati Yusuf Opingopi, a seasoned journalist in the region of West Nile, serving.
Well, the audience, the community, like a choir.
Thank you so much for keeping with us on The Viewpoint. Catch me next Friday, same time, same station. Good night.
West Nile TV, lighting up the region. West Nile